This transmission is unrehearsed and unedited, and is hereby begun without further comment as to its lack of moral value.
A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away.
Ah, Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. Give me the Star Wars. Don't let them end. Ah, Star.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special Corran on the Horn. The Indianapolis Eclipse Open happened a few weeks ago. My wife and I traveled together, her first time traveling with me to a Star Wars CCG event. Within 5 minutes of arriving, we realized that the hotel had downplayed construction on the website. The entire first floor was under construction. To get to our room, we had the option of waiting 10 minutes on the hotel's one working elevator or walking through construction areas labeled Keep Out. We chose the latter, as we'd been given permission by the person who seemed to be in charge. I left my wife in the room to get the rest of our luggage, and the fire alarm went off. What followed was a weekend full of construction-related drama. The public restroom was under construction, and the employee restroom stopped working between Friday and Saturday, so if we needed to use the restroom, we had to go back either through the construction or by waiting for the elevator to our rooms. But besides the construction drama, the weekend was pretty uneventful. I won 9 games and lost 9 games. I met a few new people and introduced them to my wife and others. Still, it just felt like a weekend where I played a lot of Star Wars cards, just another major. And I don't have that much new to say about it. During the event, I did ask some folks my patented 3 questions. So I'll share them with you now. Then in the second act, I'll share some more general thoughts about where I'm at with my Star Wars fandom, as we've recently hit the 10-year anniversary of Disney's choice to end the expanded universe. Okay, I remember. Let's make sure. Okay, it looks like it's going. Okay, I'm here with Chris Schoenthal, tournament guy. And there's construction in the background, so hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Okay, it's just going to keep going. Okay, so first question. How did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
That's a really good question. I feel like... I don't know, because I remember my first pack wasn't the traditional, like, oh, I found the 2-player set thing. I bought a random pack of them at a card store, but it was just a classic pack of Premier because I got a Falcon. So I do not remember when I learned the game, really.
Okay, good start. What is a Decipher card that you'd like to see virtualized?
Decipher card I would like to see virtualized. Dantooine base operations.
Okay. And we're getting into springtime. First cookout of the year, what's on your grill?
Probably just a classic New York. I like a good New York steak.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm here with Travis. Travis, how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
I learned from you at the Forge Tavern.
All right. What is a Decipher card that you'd like to see virtualized?
Gungans. Any Gungans.
Okay. And first cookout of the year, what's on your grill?
Burgers. Just burgers and probably corn on the cob.
All right. All right, I'm here with Steve. Steve, how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
Through grinding, playing at comic book stores back when the game was in print.
All right. What's a Decipher card you'd like to see virtualized?
Limited resources.
Okay. First cookout of the year, what's on your grill?
Hot dogs.
There we go. Okay. All right, I'm here with AJ. AJ, first question, how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
Mark Walseth taught me in 8th grade in 2016. I was 14 years old, I think, and I still didn't get any references back then. So, yes.
All right. Second question, what's a Decipher card that you'd like to see virtualized?
That's a good question. Hyperdrive's already virtualized. Something in Hyperdrive. The Watto's Junkyard, is that,
Sure.
that's not virtualized, yeah.
Sure. Okay. First cookout of the year. What's on your grill?
Probably a burger. Bat Mouse really wants me to make burgers, so I should try it. I'm a horrible cook, though.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks. Morning. All right. I'm here with the one and only Chris Kelly.
Hi, everyone.
So, first question for you: how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
I'm just here so I don't get fined. No, I'm kidding. I had the two-player game and read through that rule book, and then I wrote to Decipher, and they sent me a guide with frequently asked questions.
Okay. What is a Decipher card that you'd like to see virtualized?
Courage of a Skywalker, because the image is really good.
Okay. And finally, we're getting into springtime. First cookout of the year. What's on your grill?
Hot dogs, cheeseburgers. That's about it.
Thank you. I am here with Randy.
Hello.
All right, 3 questions for you. First question: how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
I learned how to play Star Wars cards back in the mid-'90s when I was in junior high with one of my buddies, Chris. He had one of the Hoth two-player starter games.
Okay. What's a Decipher card that you'd like to see virtualized?
Yeah. Well, that's why I need a sense. Because every
Monarch.
Odin.
Definitely Monarch.
Nice. I like it. And finally, first cookout of the year. What's on your grill?
Oh, that's going to definitely be a New York strip and a ribeye and some corn on the cob.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm here with Trevor. All right, 3 questions for you. First question: how did you learn how to play Star Wars cards?
I got my first starter set with my brother when I was 10, and we actually learned how to play while visiting my grandma in Kenya. So.
All right. Next question: what's a Decipher card you'd like to see virtualized?
A Decipher card to see virtualized. I feel like we've virtualized almost everything. It would probably be another bounty hunter because I love court. So I would say can I say one that's already been virtualized,
Sure.
but I want a different virtualized
Sure,
version?
sure.
I want a different Bosk. He's a cool character. He's boring. He's pretty boring.
I feel like, I agree. I feel like
he has 2 virtualized. He has the ship and the guy.
But I agree with you. I feel like Bosk should be more playable than he is.
There's a lot of cards that affect Trandoshans, which could be fun if you had a good Trandoshan to play. So.
And last question: first cookout of the year. What's on your grill?
It's burgers. Yeah, pretty boring. All
right.
Juicy burgers.
Thanks. April 25th, 2014. And all of my worst fears have come to pass. The EU is no longer in continuity. They are splitting the Star Wars universe into the movie universe and the, quote, Legends EU universe. I know that it would have been difficult to see this going any other way, but one of the best parts about Star Wars is its ability to tell one story in one continuity. Expletive, you, Disney. That is from my Facebook page. It's been a decade since Disney nuked the expanded universe. Since then, we've seen a ton of good, bad, and controversial stories told in the new canon. We had a sequel trilogy that was far from perfect, a few standalone movies, and numerous live-action and animated TV shows. And of course, we had video games, comics, and novels. There's so much baggage to unpack. No 2 Star Wars fans agree on what pieces of the puzzle are good, which are bad, and that's how it's always been. People had problems with changes in the special edition. They didn't like the Phantom Menace or the prequels in general. When Clone Wars killed off Evan Peel, certain corners of the internet rioted. I was part of a forum site that included a petition to remove the Clone Wars from continuity because of this issue. The EU as we knew it launched in 1991 with Tim Zahn's Heir to the Empire. For a lot of people, the golden age of the EU was that book and the next two books that completed the Thrawn trilogy. Others would include books like Tales of the Bounty Hunters, Shadows of the Empire, the Jedi Academy trilogy, the X-Wing series, and really everything up to Vector Prime. Released in 1999, Vector Prime was the first in a long-running series called The New Jedi Order. It featured the introduction of the Yuzhang Vong, a weird extragalactic alien race, and the death of Chewbacca. For a certain type of Star Wars fan, this was the last book they read and the end of the EU for them. For me, I read it when I was 13 and loved it. I consider it the beginning of the expanded universe. The New Jedi Order built off of what came before, created a formal timeline, and mapped out the galaxy. Most of what came before, for me, felt like it was in a world where the author was making up things as they went along. Also, the New Jedi Order featured a teenage Jason, Jaina, and Anakin Solo, who I found to be extremely relatable. Plus, you had Kip Duron, a hotshot Jedi with questionable judgment and possibly more force power than Luke Skywalker, Jagged Fell, a human raised by Thrawn's people and eventual love interest for Jaina. And most importantly, our heroes were fighting someone other than the Empire. The New Jedi Order led to Legacy of the Force, featuring Darth Caedus, a clear influence for Ben Solo, which led to Fate of the Jedi. Even though I read all 18 books, 22 if you count Millennium Falcon and Dark Nest, these were largely a miss for me. The Dark Nest trilogy would have made a good standalone novel, and each of the longer series would have made better trilogies. There were just too many extra plot threads. For much of Legacy of the Force, I would skip any chapter featuring Han and Leia, which is wild considering it was a series about their son turning evil and taking over the galaxy. Fate of the Jedi was followed by a single novel, Crucible, that I couldn't get through. It was so long ago I can't say for sure whether it was a really bad book or if I was just kind of burnt out at the time. But the EU wasn't just about telling stories at the edge of continuity. Some of my friends loved the Knights of the Old Republic video games and novels. I enjoyed the Darth Bane trilogy, but couldn't really get into much else from that era. There were a handful of Clone Wars and other prequel-era novels that I really enjoyed. Jedi Trial wasn't a good book, but it was a fun read that hit me at just the right time. Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader worked as a sequel to Revenge of the Sith. It was a great character study of Vader. That book, along with Kenobi and Scoundrels, told self-contained stories about characters we love and could technically really exist in continuity if we wanted to. If we wanted to pretend, you know. Then you have comics. Dark Horse's EU comics launched around the same time as the Thrawn trilogy with Dark Empire, a story about a resurrected emperor where Luke briefly turns to the dark side. Dark Horse produced a ton of content over the years. They gave depth to characters like Aura Singh and Quinlan Voss, who were only on camera for a second or two, told the story of Jar Jar getting banished, and pushed continuity out 200 years following Luke Skywalker's descendant Cade Skywalker. So let's get back to April 25th, 2014. I felt like Star Wars continuity up to that point had been tight and unified. Even if an obscure Jedi Master like Evan Peel, who had been featured in a recent post-Revenge of the Sith novel, was killed off in the Clone Wars, the big picture was always the same. Star Wars was so much more than the movies. There were 7 movies, including Clone Wars. But there were over 100 novels and probably thousands of comics. Deciding to build a new continuity was a slap in the face to longtime fans. Overnight, some of the most excited and dedicated fans were done. Many of them never got over it. There's a moment in the Beer Baron episode of The Simpsons where Barney says, $45? This better be the best tasting beer in the world, when he buys a beer from Homer. He then takes a sip and says, you got lucky. That was my reaction to reading A New Dawn, the first new canon novel by John Jackson Miller and prequel to the upcoming Rebels cartoon series. Another series that I was skeptical of since it was replacing the Clone Wars, a show that in spite of a weak first couple seasons had recently come into its own. I don't know if it was known behind the scenes that Disney would be getting rid of the EU, or if this was just the direction that Star Wars novels were going after a series of bloated and unsatisfying series, but these early new canon novels were all self-contained books featuring beloved characters. Heir to the Jedi, a book about Luke between A New Hope and the Empire, was even announced as an EU novel, the third in a trilogy with Razor's Edge, a book about Leia, and Honor Among Thieves, a Han Solo book, all of which took place around that time. Lords of the Sith, a book about Vader and the Emperor, was the last in the first batch of the new canon novels. I never read Heir to the Jedi, but the others were all rock solid. At the same time, Marvel, also owned by Disney, launched a line of Star Wars comics with top-tier talent. Jason Aaron wrote the flagship title, which was really something special. Kieran Gillen wrote a Darth Vader book and created fan favorite evil Indiana Jones type, Dr. Aphra. Over the years, the quality has dipped, but Charles Soule had a great run about Darth Vader building his castle on Mustafar, and I really enjoyed a series of weekly one-shots titled Age of Republic, Age of Rebellion, and Age of Resistance that told stories from the corresponding eras. After the initial rush of comics and novels, I slowed down a bit with my reading. Still, it's really nice to have access to consistently excellent comics, and there's usually a new canon novel that is worth checking out. Something that we all knew would come from getting rid of the EU was the opportunity to mine it for story beats and concepts. People get bogged down on whether they liked the execution of this stuff without really acknowledging how much creators have celebrated what came before in the new stories they've spent the last 10 years telling. First, we had Rebels, a show that, like I said, replaced our beloved Clone Wars. What we didn't know was that it would end up acting as a companion show to the Clone Wars. It was the same tone and reused many of the original characters from the previous series. It also brought back Thrawn and had one of the best series finales of any show I've ever seen. Next, we had The Force Awakens. I don't think we have the emphasis on the Skywalker legacy if not for numerous expanded universe stories about the Solo kids. Ben Solo / Kylo Ren reminds me so much of Jason Solo / Darth Caedus. Rogue One was the first No Jedi Allowed movie and really just felt like the expanded universe. It was one of those untold tales that had actually been told over and over, featuring characters like Kyle Katarn. Plenty of DNA from the X-Wing novels, the Empire comics, and other early EU stories. The Last Jedi was all about subverting expectations, but Lonely Luke, aside from feeling like every reluctant mentor in stories like these, asked the question, what if the Jedi Academy that you grew up with failed? If we're going to get new stories in this new canon, why not take things in a different direction? And then, of course, the Force-projected Luke's standoff with the First Order walkers reminded me of a scene from Dark Empire, and the Death Star tech cannons they were facing looks straight out of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoon. Stuff like this isn't just fan service for me. It's evidence that the filmmakers did their research and dove deep. Solo is an odd one because, like Rogue One, it could have just been an expanded universe novel. It had the exact tone of Brian Daley's Han Solo adventures, telling a story about a heist where Han doesn't get to keep the money and instead helps fund an early version of the Rebel Alliance. Sure, the way he met Chewie was a little odd, but the Kessel Run sequence was perfect, the kind of story that should never be told because it's too cool, and then it was just that cool. It worked. The Mandalorian and really all of the Disney Plus shows operate in the new canon's convoluted continuity, but still manage to tell new and exciting stories in a way much like the EU did in its prime. We see new characters like the titular Mandalorian or characters never seen before in live action like Cad Bane. Even so, the idea of Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire in the Ahsoka show comes right back to the roots of the original Thrawn trilogy. Kenobi wouldn't exist without the EU novel of the same name, and Andor definitely took bits and pieces and implications from a lot of stuff, even if I wasn't a fan. And of course we have Rise of Skywalker, which also takes its original story from the earliest days of the EU, ripping a concept of a returned emperor with an armada of weapons meant to destroy entire planets. However you feel about the execution of Disney's new content, you cannot deny they're mining the EU for all the best parts. I mean, they even took the only good thing from the Darksaber novel, the title, and used it in multiple TV shows. I'll end this segment with a few suggestions for light reading, both for those of you who jumped ship in 2014 and for those who stopped sometime before that. If you've never touched an expanded universe book, Heir to the Empire is the obvious starting point, but personally I suggest Tales of the Bounty Hunters, as it's a collection of great short stories about some of the coolest characters in the franchise. The X-Wing series is also great if you want stories with lots of action and no Jedi. Plus, that's where you actually see Corran Horn take Coruscant for the New Republic. For standalone stories, Kenobi is a great story about Obi-Wan on Tatooine, and Scoundrels is my favorite Han Solo story about a heist. In the new canon, Bloodlines is one of the only stories we have of the politics of the New Republic. It's probably the best Leia-centric novel that I've read. From a Certain Point of View is a systematic retelling of A New Hope via short stories from every character who gets even a second of screen time and several who don't. It's those old Tales books on steroids. They did one for Empire and Jedi as well, but I haven't read them yet. Light of the Jedi kicks off the High Republic era of multimedia stories. Fans of the Old Republic need to check it out, as it takes place 200 years before The Phantom Menace and has very interesting interpretation of that time period. If you're a fan of Rebels, A New Dawn is a must-read. It's When Hera Met Kanan, enough said. The newest new canon novel is titled The Living Force by John Jackson Miller, and I'm enjoying what I've read so far. Thanks for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed my self-indulgent ramblings. I do want to congratulate Sam Tashima for winning the Eclipse Major, and I will end with something he said when I interviewed him about a year ago.
And yeah, now we're in such an area around IP and new content that I really view it as, whether people make the buffet analogy or the pizza analogy, there's going to be something for everyone. Some people are only going to enjoy or really kind of really enjoy the pizza from, and this is from a really fine Italian place. Other people really enjoy their Domino's or their Little Caesars, kind of pulling in some of my Michigan roots there. It's all great though. You get to pick and choose. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean that pizza isn't your favorite food, or even from your favorite restaurant, to bring another food analogy in there. There are things from my favorite restaurant that I don't care for. Does that mean that I order them? No, I just consume the things that I really enjoy. And that's a way for everyone to enjoy having a connectivity to this IP that kind of comes back to a really long time ago when we were first introduced to it.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Until next time, good luck, have fun, and no reverts. This podcast is a production of the KendallCast Podcast Network. You can support the show for just $2 a month at patreon.com/KendallCast or make a direct donation through the PayPal link at kendallcast.ninja. Every little bit helps.